Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel, friends. It's time to once again journey among the stars and go back to where it all began as we watch Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 11, 11 already, Wink of an Eye. Can't wait to get into it, friends, so wait no longer we shall. Before we get started, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out a small channel, and it allows me to alert you next time we go live. And of course, if there's anything that we do, the original series included, that you would like early or in its full-length format, the link to our Patreon is in the description. Not a fan of Patreon? Stick with us here on YouTube memberships. You'll get all of our episodes early, plus any bonus episodes we come up with. But my dear friends, all that is then and this is now, and now it's time to board the NCC 1701 as we journey back to Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 11, Wink of an Eye. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction. And away we go! Oh, yeah. How can you go wrong with that beauty, though?
5710.5. Lieutenant Commander Scott reporting. The Enterprise received distress calls from an apparently uninhabited, incredibly beautiful city on the planet of Scalos.
Scalos?
Lieutenant Uhura, does the location of the distress call correspond with this area exactly?
Yes, sir. Coordinates correspond, Captain.
Well, apart from the landing party, there's no one here. There are no Scalosians.
Scalosians?
There's hardly any vegetation, no apparent animal life.
When we run analysis, we should have some explanation. But there is an insect life. Registers in my ears.
What do you think, Spock?
Evidently a civilization of high order. Rating number 7 on the industrial scale.
Ooh.
A most puzzling phenomenon, Captain. I shall have to study it further.
Something was here. We saw them on the screen.
Did that dude behind Plum just lick his fingers? I think he did.
What happened?
I was looking at him. I was looking right at him, and he just wasn't there.
Well, we do have transporters, so this shouldn't seem like, witchcraft, but so we could have like some type of like phase shifting. Also, friends, the industrial scale, is that like something for Star Trek, or is that something I should know and I'm just too dense to have known it? I know they give ratings to planets, but do they give ratings to civilizations? That's what it immediately made me think of anyway. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. We'll see. I get so giddy, I do, when I know that it's my time and my day of the week to record Star Trek, the original series. Oh my God, I love it. I'm going to miss these. These are my favorite uniforms. To be fair, the original uniform from The Cage was my favorite. Comfy. Judd Taylor.
What is it, Lieutenant?
Malfunction, sir.
In what?
To any and all space travelers passing within range of the planet Scalos, I send you an urgent appeal for help.
Tell me honestly, what do you think of my choker?
Our number is now 5. We were once a nation of 900,000.
Freeze it.
Wow.
As the fact remains that when we beamed down there, we couldn't find those people. They were there, now they're not. Nor is crewman Compton.
Sir, now I have readings that deflectors are inoperative. The controls are frozen.
Got it. Assist.
They used some stock footage earlier. Scotty has to have the swept back haircut. Or repurposed footage, not stock.
Your orders, Jim. You're the last one.
What do you read so far?
Can we discuss it here?
I don't want to talk about it on an open line.
Whatever happened to Compton down there apparently had no effect on anyone else.
Ah, the buzzing sound.
And it's just happened again. Could I be imagining it?
Well, physically, there's nothing wrong with you.
It's an interesting shot.
I say no.
All one shot, too.
We did beam something aboard. Something has invaded the ship.
Brundlekirk.
Director Spock, come in.
That's a great shot.
Lieutenant, shipwide order. Use communicators instead of intercom. Issue phasers to all crew members.
I have a reading from Life Support Center. Alien substances being
Meet me there in the double.
That was cool. That was cool. Oh.
Getting readings of an alien presence similar to those obtained on the planet's surface.
Did they bring him in to get the ship? It's just them.
It seemed, Captain, that they intend to allow only the two of us to enter. I should advise caution.
I wonder if it has something to do with them being on planet. I'm not sure the other two red shirts were on planet.
What is it?
It's a hot mess is what it is.
But it is evidently a device of alien origin.
Hooked into the life support. Designed to affect it. Destroy it. There was no force field. Something shoved me back. They're in here. You!
Show yourselves. Is that them trying to communicate?
We may look at it, Captain, but that is all.
Take some readings.
Have your readings been fed into the computer?
Affirmative.
Read out.
Computer.
Love the lighting.
Have we been invaded?
Affirmative.
Your recommendations?
If incapable of resistance, negotiate for terms.
We will not negotiate.
I was going to say, Jim's, how dare you? Rip that computer out of the ship.
My recommendation? Make them take the next step.
Jim is so cavalier. Negotiate terms. Jim vomits. How dare you? What's going on? Cool tilt. Now, is he perceiving Scotty moving slower and Spock moving slower, or is everyone actually moving slower? Or is Jim getting ready to shift phases? I like that tilt.
Spock?
Yep, he's out of phase.
Captain.
Well, hey, I don't know you except from the recorded message.
Would you mind explaining? Who are you?
Vila. The enemy.
I was laughing. I didn't hear if she said Dila or Vila.
Scotty.
I like how they make Nichelle Nichols hold position. Everybody else gets to have like a camera assist.
I cannot hear you, Captain. To their ears, you sound like an insect. Oh, that's your description, Captain.
Cool.
There is nothing wrong with them.
What have you done?
Changed you
You're just moving fast?
because of the acceleration. We move in the wink of an eye
Nice.
Why?
because I like you.
Why? I mean, I love Jim. I want to know why you like him.
Is this why you sabotaged my ship?
Sabotage.
My chief scientist and his crew. I am their queen. You are going to be their king. Is it so dreadful a prospect?
I'm going to kill all of you now.
But the stun effect is not very pleasant.
Well, that won't work.
I'm going to make a bet.
Point right at me.
I'd stun myself. So we can slow myself down.
My reactions are much too fast for such a crude weapon. This can be set for stun and destroy too, like yours.
And for apparently telekinesis.
Will you set this ship to rights? Take out that device in the life support system.
Don't be so silly. You'll feel better about it all in a little while.
What do you mean? Out of my way.
Captain. Captain Kirk!
I like this. I like this.
He vanished.
Mr. Sulu, do you verify?
That's just the way it happened. He was there, and all of a sudden he wasn't there.
Hey guys, still hanging loose.
Let's go.
I'm sorry, sir. Entry's forbidden.
By whose order?
The commander, sir. You'll have to step back, please.
Compton?
She's one of them. I've never known anyone like her. She brought me aboard, and I showed them the operation of the ship. Bridge controls, life support.
Hey, thanks, Compton.
All right, Captain.
Take sidekick. Compton came around.
Yes. Did anyone else?
I had some.
May I?
Was it the coffee?
I knew I should have put some whiskey in it.
Suggest that we recall the captain's words. Make them take the next step. It would seem they have taken it.
His abduction.
You have the con. I shall be in the medical lab.
Let's tie a string around everybody.
If they're so stubborn a species, perhaps they will last longer.
It may be.
I swear by my choker.
Hello.
And Jim's back.
What is that device doing on my ship?
Dealer will explain it.
Okay, you're up.
It is not yet completely linked to your support system, but it is an operating order. Study it if you wish.
I would like to destroy it. How is she not getting shocked? Holy shit.
In your struggle with Compton, some of his cells were damaged.
Cell dam. Okay. So it's just like rapid aging.
He was so young. Is this what you have planned for us?
We all die, even on Scalos.
You first.
Why do you care what he feels?
Really, he's not one of us. He's temporary.
He's temporary.
Species is capable of much affection.
I have noted that.
I wonder if they will demonstrate it to us.
I hate these people. And it's strong, but I don't approve of their methods. I don't approve of their chokers.
Go back to work.
By my bedazzled choker, you will be mine, my queen.
Go ahead. You won't accomplish anything, but it may be historically valuable.
Okay. Thanks.
Exist at this accelerated level, becoming docile eventually.
Makes you wonder how long Compton was actually there. He was taken, they went all the way back up to the ship. I mean, that could have been months.
The device attached to the life support systems, it is my belief that they are turning the Enterprise into a gigantic deep freeze for purposes only the Scalosians know.
Quite correct.
Oh, great.
The unit will be activated. By the time they hear this, it will be too late.
Oh my God, it's so annoying, so frustrating. Oh, Jim, how you haven't just gone ham on all these people, I don't know. I know, I mean, they can take you out with one of those stun sticks. You need one of those.
You have remarkable reasoning powers, Captain. You were quite right in almost every assumption.
Why are you doing this?
Do you really want to know?
Sure.
Our country was almost destroyed by volcanic eruptions. The water was polluted. Radiation was released. All of our men had become sterile. So we had to mate outside our own people. Don't you see, Captain? Do I have to go into every detail?
Yes.
We'll be kind to you. I wouldn't hurt you, certainly. I do like you.
Thanks.
Captain, we have the right to survive.
Not by killing others.
Right.
Your trouble is in you.
We did not ask for it. We're not to blame. We are handling it in the only way we know how.
You're to be blamed for that, then.
Have your scientists disconnect, destroy that unit. I promise you, we'll use every skill we have to help you. We'll move you to another planet.
We've tried to make the transition to your level. Some of us, that is. Those who made the attempt died.
How did they die, though? Let Bones and Spock have a crack at this.
I'm setting it to allow enough time for all of us to get off the ship. Please don't delay.
Good move, Jim. Get to work, Jim. You know what you're doing.
Why did you run?
I panicked.
I don't believe that.
I don't give a shit. Yeah, just jiggle the transporter a little bit. Maybe kick it, turn it on and off.
It must be well, what do you call it? A malfunction.
Oh boy.
What would you say it is, Captain?
Malfunction.
The technicians reported a loss of power. That must be it.
The captain says his technicians...
I heard him. Do you expect me to believe him?
Who gives a shit?
I'm glad we're both innocent. I despise devious people, don't you?
Absolutely.
I know what it is. We brought it with us from Scalos. You'll excuse me, Doctor. I shall be on the bridge.
Damn, he didn't see the tape.
The room should reflect its occupant.
Absolutely. May I freshen up?
Great shot.
Are you married, Captain? No family? No attachments?
There's one.
You're married to your career, and you never look at another woman.
It's married to his ship. She's a beauty.
Am I more presentable now?
No. So brutal, I don't mean that. In comparison to the NCC 1701, can't hold a candle.
You're far too vulnerable to skin damage. All I have to do is scratch you.
Yes, I know.
And then I get old and die.
Sooner than later.
Jim has reached into his utility belt and he has pulled out his seduction boomerang.
To any and all space travelers passing within range of the planet Scalos, I send you an urgent appeal.
Speed it up.
Those of us who are left have taken shelter in this area. We have no explanation for what has been happening to us.
Here we go.
A planet Scalos on which existed several culturally enlightened indigenous populations has attempted to survive this mysterious and malignant affliction.
You got it, Spock. Nice job. It's an annoying ass sound, but... There you go, Plum.
I found a tape in the computer down here, and when I try to read it, all I get is a whine.
Bring it to the bridge at once, Doctor.
That they are turning the Enterprise into a gigantic deep freeze.
A meat locker. Literally a meat locker. Well, Jim took that part with him, so the chances of you getting this thing working...
There's nothing wrong elsewhere, sir. Sufficient...
Scotty's still... He's on his way. Sweet Jesus. Jim's putting his boots on. And apparently she was Sans choker for a bit.
Right.
I'm going to give you cell damage. Take that pillow. Ironically, you're not fast enough. That outfit's reflecting it.
Allow me the dignity of liking the man I select. Is the transporter repaired?
No. I have more work to do.
Don't you think you'd better do it?
Have a seat. Now his is still on the floor. I wonder if Jim tried to hide that with the chair.
But we are going to Scalos.
Do you want to?
Oh, yes.
What about your crew? Aren't you worried about them?
They'll be all right.
You've completely accepted the situation, haven't you?
As far as you know. A little bit of cocaine should take care of it, Doctor.
Is how do we get it to the captain?
By drinking the Scalosian water.
But Spock, you don't know what that'll do to you.
It is somewhat stimulating.
See ya. Yeah, it worked.
Fascinating.
He's gone.
Oh, great. That was fantastic. Very well designed shot.
Come up when you wish. Signal me when you are ready.
Where will you be?
Blowing up the ship.
Your crew will be all right. You said so yourself.
I'm sorry.
Surprise.
He's armed.
I'm ready for him.
Yeah, he's about ready to get Spock. He's like, he doesn't even ask. He's like, I knew you'd figure this shit out. Ugh, it's my third stun of the day. He's dead.
You are very clever, Captain. You tricked me. I should have known that you would never adjust.
It wasn't hard, to be very, very fair.
What do you want us to do with you?
Don't make a game of it, Captain. We've lost.
If I sent you back to Scalus, you'd undoubtedly play the...
Do it again.
Your Federation will quarantine the entire area.
Yes, I suppose it would.
And we will die and solve your problem that way. And ours.
Is that the resolution?
You could still find life on Scalus. Very pleasant.
Very brief.
It'll be just as brief here. You cannot get back to your own level.
Well.
No answer, Captain. Do I displease you so much?
What's the whole kidnapping thing?
Energized.
Goodbye, Captain.
See ya. Thanks for the kidnapping.
Dr. McCoy and I have synthesized a possible counter-agent to the Scalosian water.
Possible.
Let's test it.
Scotty will start moving. Now Spock should disappear and Scotty should start moving.
Spock.
There we go.
Did you come from?
Out of the nowhere, into the here.
And Mr.
Out of the nowhere into the here. I think I got my memorable quote.
Mr. Spock has remained in accelerated time so that he might effect repairs to the ship more rapidly. Somebody...
That's awesome. Spock's like, fuck it, man. I'll just stay here.
Cancel red alert, Mr. Sulu. Aye, sir. Open all channels.
Spock's just going to appear at science.
Mr. Spock, my compliments to your repair work and yourself.
Thank you, Captain. I found it an accelerating experience.
Nice, Spock.
Goodbye, dear.
Nice. Nice. All right, everybody. We just got done watching the 11th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek, the original series, Wink of an Eye, and the only thing left to do is talk about it. All right, everybody. We just got done watching the 11th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek, the original series, Wink of an Eye. You know what? I found a lot of similarities in this one between the Tholian Web, in that in the Tholian Web we had Jim taken from the crew. Same thing that went on here. However, the tension in the Tholian Web was enhanced because we didn't know how he was doing. And I think I mentioned it when we were watching the Tholian Web that there's there was probably a choice that was made in the script process to be like, okay, should we flash over and show Jim? And so as soon as you do that, as soon as you would flash over and show Jim, like in the Tholian Web when he was floating in the suit, if you know that he's okay, that he's not in pain, or he's not struggling with something, or he's not, a prisoner, or he's not, then immediately the tension is reduced and then the onus of the episode goes over to just solving a problem. It's more of a time thing, and the tension would come from the time with the Tholian Web and the cage that they were erecting. However, the problem with that is the enhanced idea that Jim's not doing well, that anything could be happening to him, that whenever he appears and he seems to be saying something, he could be screaming, he could be, warning them about something. There's a lot of ambiguity in what exactly was occurring with Jim during the events of the Tholian Web, and keeping those obscured, keeping those fogged was really something that made that episode work. But with this one, you couldn't really do that because, with the Scalosians, you had to be able to know what their motives were. You had to go over with Jim to the other side. You had to figure all that out. But in so doing, that kind of takes away from a lot of the tension that we normally would have in an episode like this. In fact, if during this reaction, I think the tension for me was replaced with frustration, because you have, you can't do anything to affect this. Oh yeah, go over wherever you want to go. You can't turn off this device. You can't best us. There's nothing that you can really do to help your crew. We're going to turn this whole place into a meat locker. That's frustrating for me. It really is, because you know, I know that Jim's going to figure a way out of this, that Spock's going to figure a way to get to Jim, but the problem with it is that interim moments where you're waiting for things to occur, like Jim said, we have to wait for them to make the next step. That's sort of like how the plot was for this entire episode. And again, it's just me, because I just don't like things like this. I've never, even as a kid, I didn't like things that were frustrating, which again, that's a method of storytelling, you know, to be able to put your captain in a situation that they can't just, you know, force their way out of it. There's no escape from this situation, it seems like. You know, for me, that was always frustrating. And especially when someone would lord it over them, like, oh, well, you can try, but you can never get out of here. Shit, that frustrates me so bad. You know, and so I felt that again when watching this episode. Was it a good episode? I think that it was definitely middle of the pack towards the back end of everything. I've seen ones that I have not enjoyed as much. This one was okay. Yeah, we've seen a lot of these themes though get to be rehashed, where we've had somebody who's like I want the romantic foil for Kirk, that is, or anyone that's in love with somebody else. You know, another one of their, you know, her side, someone loves her, you know. I mean, the most recent, I guess, that we had, was it the most recent, was when Morgan Earp liked the girl in the bar for Chekhov, you know. So but you know, and again, so we've seen similar things like this. We've seen Jim taken away from the crew. We've seen this type of, you know, the Enterprise is being held hostage. Something tells me that, especially these things that are encapsulated on, and this was the first time too, I should say this. This is the first time too that I noticed that, you know, the landing party, like being on planet, they were obviously standing like right in front of like a matte painting of the city. And so it was like, that was the first time where I really noticed that, man, they're cutting some corners here. They really need to save money on this budget, and it's noticeable. And now we're constantly, everything's kind of occurring on the Enterprise, or about, you know, in the rooms of the Enterprise or in specific locales of the Enterprise. So again, we're not having anything new sort of brought to the table. And again, this is not a wink of an eye problem. This is just kind of a culmination. You know, we're getting straws and straws put on the camel's back here. And I'm by no means, you know, saying that that's going to break me for Star Trek. It's just that what all you have all said, you know, that season 3 was just plagued by not having enough money, by, you know, time constraints, by the studio was all over them, you know, that you had kind of a lack of leadership going on at this time. I think those things are starting to bubble through to the surface. But, you know, whenever I get to an episode in season 3 that I'm not really sure about, you know, normally, I mean, the good ones are the good ones, you know, but whenever I get into this gray area, like, did I like this? Is it below average? Is it average? What I tend to do, and whether this is fair or not, I mean, it's obviously not fair because you're dealing with a much different set of circumstances and the money and the budget and all that stuff. But I take the episode from season 3 and I place it into season 1 or season 2. How would it fare if you kind of dropped it into those two? Where would its standing be in season 1 or season 2? I think it's safe to say that with given those set of parameters, that wink of an eye would probably be towards the back end of all of that stuff. And just for my money, season 1 was absolutely fantastic, and season 2 was a very, very, very close second to it. The only thing that pushes season 1 over the top for me, we had a ton of directors. We had a ton of writers, people bringing brand new shit to Star Trek. You know what I mean? Star Trek was new itself. So everybody was trying things. We were getting really incredibly original, you know, camera angles, incredibly original, like, moments. You know, I think of Dagger of the Mind and the first Mind Meld, you know, just incredible stuff that happened in season 1. And season 2 was equally as good. The only thing and again, what a problem to have. We had 2 predominant directors in season 2, and Mark Daniels and Joseph Pevney. And so, you know, while those are 2 excellent, maybe the greatest of the Star Trek directors, we didn't experience the fingerprints of other directors, didn't get to see Star Trek through the eyes of multiple directors, which is like my favorite thing. And it isn't bad to look through the eyes of Pevney and look through the eyes of Daniels. So again, you know, that's why season 2 is just an effing hair season 1 for me. So long story short, I think if you take a season 3 episode and it's not fair, but again, whenever I'm worried about, like, how am I going to view this episode, or not really worried, but I'm kind of confused as to how I should look at it, I usually do that. And so, wink of an eye, enjoyable episode, as are the vast majority of Star Trek episodes for me. You know, I take something away from all of them. The only one that I think I really walked away from and was just like, was the alternative factor. Everything else I've enjoyed to the point where I would definitely watch it again. 100% watch it again. You know, and that includes like Spock's brain. 100% would watch it again. You know, the alternative factor I'd watch again, but I'm convinced that there's, and again, wrong or not, I'm convinced I probably wouldn't get anything more out of it. But that's me. But how would I rate this episode, you know, given that idea of season 1 and season 2? I certainly didn't hate it by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I don't think, other than the alternative factor, which I didn't hate, I just don't think there's anything to really get from the alternative factor. There's always cool stuff to get from every episode of Star Trek. You know, we had some really interesting moments here about how, you know, figuring out what was going on, listening to the buzzing of the chirping, you know, watching Spock, and, you know, all that stuff is always great for me. Spock electing to stay in the accelerated rate to effect repairs, cool little moment. We had a great line, out of nowhere, what is it, out of nowhere into the here. That was awesome. That was, I mean, that's a really cool line. So, I mean, there's always good takeaways from everything, you know. And again, we got to see the rest of the crew kind of cook without Jim, albeit, you know, we didn't have the same tension that we had in the Tholian web. But I'm wondering, you know, we're talking about budget issues and we're talking about things like that. I'm wondering exactly how widespread that was, at least in this episode, because, you know, we did see some kind of reused footage of Scotty and things like that. There's only one person that can answer us and get us and weave us through the ins and the outs in a wink of an eye himself. So I guess we should ask and maybe beg a little bit, because we really need to know about this, but maybe just show the correct honorific. General? Greetings and salutations, my friends. 'Tis I, leader of men, lover of women, and best friend to Jim Kirk, General Trelane. Retired. Friends, this is where, after having watched and reacted to an original series episode, I like to dig a little bit deeper and find out what went on behind the cameras, because as we've often speculated, the story behind the cameras can be just as entertaining as the one they put in front of the cameras. But to keep myself from wandering off into the weeds for 3 hours, I've given myself 5 categories to explore. The first of which, writer and director, who were they? The second, guest stars, did we have any? The third, of the core cast or the Big 8, who was present? The fourth and spiciest of the categories, production notes, what went on behind the cameras? And last but certainly not least, category 5, a memorable quote from this episode. Let's get started. All right, friends, and for our very first category of writer and director, well, good news, we have returning family members, friends, as both are vets to the original series experience. In fact, one of them, a founding father. Our writer for this episode, none other than pseudonym for Gene Coon, Lee Cronin. And as all of you have explained to me, Lee Cronin was used not necessarily as a negative or that Gene didn't want his name associated with it, but more of the fact that, hey, I've been hired and I'm working for another studio, so using my actual name might cause problems. So Lee Cronin it is. And friends, I didn't look forward to verify this, but in my research for this episode, it certainly seems like this might be the last time we get to see Lee Cronin, Gene Coon. If that's the case, an amazing, amazing job building this fantastic world. You could very much argue that Gene Coon was paramount to making sure that Star Trek is what it is. And I don't think that's an overstatement at the very least. In fact, it's an understatement. I think that our guy did so much that his absence, really, we can't even speculate as to what it would be. But if this is the last time I get to experience any of your art in the Star Trek field, my friend, thank you so very much. Wherever you are, hopefully traveling the stars, I hope that you know you've made a mark on just about everybody that's watched everything that you've done. And friends, not to follow such a great lead in with our writer, our director is Judd Taylor, who is also returning. We did an episode earlier, The Paradise Syndrome. So again, we have 2 returning members, so let's see what we have. Let's move on. All right, everyone, and for our second category of guest stars, who did we have in this one? Well, we had Kathy Brown as Deela, we had Jason Evers as Rail, and we had Joffrey Binney as Compton. Friends, I always love putting in any time of security, remember the security personnel has a line or two or some interaction. I always like putting them in here because I think that of the entire original series, I've said this once and I'll say it again, the one perspective we were missing was sort of like that lower decks perspective, that ensign perspective, you know, and I wish, oh my, if I could have a choice, that one thing I could add to the original series, I would drop Ensign Garovic into the Star Trek kind of, you know, semi-permanent cast, because boy oh boy, that story with his father being the one that Jim served, oh my, can you imagine what we could have gotten into with that one? Friends, tangent over, but those were our guest stars. Let's move on. All right, everyone, and for our third category of the core cast, or the Big Eight, who was present? Well, as always, we will go over the Big Eight, which consists of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Sulu, Scotty, Uhura, and Chekhov and Chapel. Well, technically, we had everybody appear here, except Chekhov does not appear in the flesh or live, I guess you could say, in this episode, as only archival footage was used, and we get like a shot of his back at one point. So technically no, and sort of yes. Let's move on. And now, friends, for category 4, as always, the juiciest of the categories, production notes. We need to find out what went on behind the cameras. Let's get started. And for our first production note, my friends, Judd Taylor, our director, and I made mention of this whenever we were watching, as soon as we had a transition or a phase between kind of our time and the accelerated timeline, Judd Taylor did a slight tilt to the camera to kind of indicate that that's what something was going on, something to kind of put us off kilter. And I thought that was a really very simple, very, you know, an easy device, but I think that it had a lot of weight and it carried a kind of impact that bled through to the rest of the episode. Good stuff. Little things like that can go a long way, especially with me. So, Mr. Taylor, a tip of the old cap. Let's move on. Now for our second production note, when Kirk shoots his phaser to stun Deela on the bridge, that is the first and only time we see a phaser indicated with a green color and an actual beam that comes out of it, because they were lengthening the shot to make it look like, you know, time had slowed down, and for some reason the equipment wasn't accelerated with Jim. That was still moving in regular time, I guess. But she was able to dodge out of the way. Normally what we would get is a flash that would kind of take over the whole frame, indicating that a stun had just occurred. So first and only time for one of those things done in the special sped up accelerated world, I guess. Let's move on. Now, friends, for category 3, and I actually did not pick up on this during the reaction, but where we had the kind of the cryo device that they were going to use to freeze the Enterprise, that wasn't technically engineering, that was environmental engineering. And to make it look obviously different than our normal engineering room, they redressed the briefing room set to make sure that they kind of were able to have a different feel to this place and have it be a separate locale. I did, however, think that the machine that they used and kind of the tubing and stuff that are around, it was the first time I ever looked at it and thought, that looked rushed, or that didn't look finished, or it just kind of looked like a bit of a hot mess there. And I do not hold that against any of the creatives or the crew or anybody that was designed to do all this. From everything I've read, by this point, when a shoestring would have been too much of a budget. I mean, they were making do with whatever they had. And again, did it detract from the episode? Not at all. Was it noticed? Only by comparison, because we have had examples before of more fleshed out and finished sets. But this was the briefing room redressed, and they gave it the old NCC 1701 effort, and I thought they did a fine job. Friends, let's move on. Now, this is the one that kind of blew my mind. Our fourth production note, and definitely the spiciest of this category. The creatives were able to slip past the censors and standards and practices, the whole, hey, I think they just slept together moment between Deela and Kirk. The reason how they were able to do this, whenever they had written out the script, it just cuts back to them and she's still combing her hair. They added in Kirk putting on his boot during the absolute last second of the scene, they had Bill Shatner pull that boot on. So you're definitely thinking those boots came off for a reason. Now, what I like to think about all this is we had this type of speculation with the Paradise Syndrome, where it was very possible that Miramani had the ability, or she got pregnant, and we thought, oh my gosh, is there an offspring of Kirk somewhere? And then she passed away. But now Deela was left on planet. There was no, if she did in fact get pregnant by Jim during this time, I think the creatives of current Star Trek have a very viable avenue to bringing in Kirk, or an offspring of Kirk, I should say. I think that would be definitely something that you could do, and it would work if done right. That's the real trick, though, isn't it? Friends, let's move on. All right, friends, and for our fifth and final production note with this one basically sums up. I could have gone into more detail about the budgetary constraints that they had, but I mean, you all know this. At this point, the budget was the source of basically every problem that they had. Their ability to hire writers, their ability to get directors, their ability to get guest stars, their ability to put on, the type of show they wanted to do with the special effects, with the sets, with the costuming, all of that stuff. So everything, it basically became a shell game. How can we save a penny here? How can we save a dime here? How can we save $1 here? And so archival footage of past episodes started to make a play here, a very prominent play in this episode, as they were trying desperately to just save time, save money, use a shot that could just be kind of shoehorned into an episode. And we saw an example of this at the top of this episode, where, of course, Montgomery Scott has an entirely different haircut than he does, a few scenes later. But while that is sort of a blatant use of that, it's not something that would be too terrible. I think, though, systemically, I think that was the morale problem that they were having. At least, I'd say the primary source of it. It's just, what a shame. What a shame, because I do think that most of the episodes that have sort of been mediocre for us in season 3 would at the very least been helped a little bit by having an ample budget kind of backing it and pushed behind it. But friends, that is then and this is now, and there's nothing we can do about it, but respect what they were able to do with that very limited budget. Let's move on. And now, my friends, for our fifth and final category, a memorable quote from this episode. Well, I sort of buried the lead and spoiled this during the actual reaction, but the line that Jim gives to Scott whenever he reappears, and Scott says, "Where were you, Captain?" And Jim says, "Out of the nowhere and into the here." I thought that was a fantastic line, and if Gene Coon wrote that one, that is a great send-off line for Mr. Coon as well. Friends, thus ends another installment of Q&A. Until such time as you and I get to join Jim for his adventures in space, behave yourself.